9.4 Application of Linear Equations. The purpose of learning to solve linear equations is to be able to solve real-world problems. Before we can solve a word problem, we have to be able to translate English words into mathematical symbols. And in order to do that, you need to know what the different words represent. Addition is represented by words like sum, plus, added to, more than, increased by, or total. Subtraction is represented by difference of, minus, subtracted from, less than, decreased by, or less. In multiplication, we use words like product, times, multiply, twice. Twice would mean we would multiply by 2, or of. For division, we hear words like quotient, divide, into, ratio, and divided by. And equals, or equality, is represented by equals, gives, is, was, should be, yields, amounts to, represents, or is the same as. Knowing what these words represent will help us to be able to translate our English phrases into mathematical equations or expressions. So here we're going to fill in each phrase with the correct translations. A number. If we don't know what the number is, we have to represent it by using what's called a variable. A variable is usually some letter, and it can be any letter that we want it to be. A lot of times we use the variable x to represent a number, but it could be P or A or M or any letter that you want it to be. If we're going to use x as our number and we want to write twice the number, twice means that we're multiplying. So we would just write 2x. Twice the number decreased by 6 would be 2x minus 6, because decreased by means to subtract. Now, whenever we're writing twice the number, if you'll notice, since I was talking about multiplication, I didn't use a multiplication symbol in between the number and the variable. I could have written it as 2, and then I could have used a dot to represent multiplication and an x. I could have used parentheses to represent multiplication, or do what I did and just wrote the number and the variable next to each other. That also means multiplication. The one way that I would not represent twice the number is I would not write 2 times x and use x as a multiplication symbol. In algebra, we don't use x as a multiplication symbol because we use x as a variable. So don't write multiplies like that. You can use any one of these, but not this. All right, for number 2, it says a number. So just to change it up, I'm going to use n to represent my number. Like I said, you can use any letter that you want it to be. The sum of a number and 4. Sum means addition. So the sum of a number and 4 would be n plus 4. Twice the sum of a number and 4 is different than twice the number. This said twice the number, this says twice the sum of the number and 4. So that doesn't mean that we're multiplying the number times 2. We're multiplying all of this times 2. So the way that we write that is 2 times n plus 4. This is twice the sum of the number and 4. This was twice the number decreased by 6. See the difference? Okay, a number. I'll just go back to using x. A number, the difference of a number and 2. Okay, so difference means subtract. Whenever we talked about the different properties of real numbers, we talked about how addition and multiplication are commutative, which means that we can change the order and it won't change anything. So here, when we had the sum of a number and 4, it said the sum of a number and 4, so we should put the number first and then 4. But if I had written it as 4 plus the number, it wouldn't change anything because we can add in any order and we'll get the same thing. But when we're dealing with subtraction, we have to be careful and we have to put things in the right order or we'll get the wrong answer. So the difference of a number and 2, the difference of a number and 2 would be written like this. The difference of a number and 2 divided by 5. So all of this, the difference of a number and 2 divided by 5, we would put that in parentheses. That whole group is being divided by 5. And that's how we would write that expression. Okay, for number 4, an integer. An integer is still just a number. So again, I'm going to use x. 3 consecutive integers. When we say consecutive integers or consecutive numbers, that just means one right after the other. Like 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, 17, 18, 19. It's one number right after the other. So we don't know what number we're starting with, so our first number, our integer, is x. And then the next consecutive integer, to get from 1 to 2, I would need to add 1. And then to get from 1 to 3, I would need to add 2. So, for example, if my consecutive integers were 1, 2, 3, x is my 1, and then 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3. So one number right after the other, and it doesn't matter what numbers we start with, because we don't know what our first number is. If I had started with 7, 8, 9 are consecutive integers. Well, to get from 7 to the next number, we would have to add 1. To get to 8, we would have to add 1. To get from 7 to 9, 7 plus 2 is 9. We would have to add 2. And that happens with any consecutive integers. Well, the next one says 3 consecutive even integers. Consecutive even integers, or an example of those, would be 2, 4, 6. Okay, so again, I don't know what I'm starting with, but whatever I'm starting with, I'm going to say that that's x. Well, to get from one even integer to the next even integer, to get from 2 to 4, I would need to add 2. To get from 2 to 6, if I'm starting with 2, to get to 6, I would need to add 4. To get to the next even integer, I would need to add 6. So we're going up by 2's every time. Start with 1, then we add 2, then we add 2 more, and so on for even integers. Now this one's a little tricky. Odd integers. An example of 3 consecutive odd integers would be 3, 5, 7. Okay, well, I don't know where I'm starting, but whatever number I'm starting with is my x. Then to get to the next odd number, what do I need to add to 3 to get to 5? I still need to add 2. What do I need to add to 3 to get to 7? I still need to add 4. So even though these are odd integers and these are even integers, our variables look the same. Because whatever we started with is what makes the difference. If I start with an even number and I add 2 every time, I'm going to get to the next even number. If I start with an odd number and I add 2 every time, I'm going to get to the next odd number. So the only one that's different are the consecutive even integers. Consecutive even, we go up by 1 every time. 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. But for even and odd integers, we go up by 2 every time. Now we're going to solve some real-life word problems. First, you need to read the problem and decide what you're trying to find out. Figure out what your unknown is. What is it that you're looking for? And then we write a let statement for the unknown. Read the problem again to translate and set up your equation. Then we solve the equation, and then we reread the problem to make sure that we answer the question. Number 1 says 4 times a number minus 8 is equal to 3 times a number plus 2. Find the number. Well, usually when we're doing word problems, the very last statement is telling us what we're looking for. So this says find the number. So the first part of solving a word problem said that we need to figure out what we're looking for. We're looking for the number, and write a let statement using the number. All right, so I'm going to say let n equal the number. You could use x or whatever you want, but you've got to tell me what variable you're using and what it represents. So n represents the number. Now we need to write the equation. 4 times a number. Okay, 4 times a number. That'd be 4n. Minus 8 is equal to 3 times a number plus 2. Okay, so 3 times a number plus 2. That's my equation. Now I need to solve the equation. So let me solve the equation. I want to get my n's on one side. For n minus 3n is 1n, which is just n. And then I'm going to add 8 to both sides. So n equals 8. They wanted us to find the number, and we found the number. All right? Number 2 says, find 4 consecutive integers whose sum is 90. All right, so to write my let statement, I'm writing 4 consecutive integers, not consecutive even or consecutive odd. It's 4 consecutive, so that's one right after the other. So I'm going to say let x equal the first integer. Then the next one, to get to the very next number, I would just add 1. X plus 1 would be the second integer. The next one would be x plus 2, because we're just adding 1 each time. And we need 4 of them, so I got to do it one more time. X plus 3 would be the fourth integer. Now it says find 4 consecutive integers whose sum is 90. So my equation is just going to add all these up. X plus 1 plus x plus 2 plus x plus 3. So that's all 3 of those, and the sum is 90. All right, so that's all I was doing. I was taking this was my first integer, my second integer, my third integer, and my fourth integer. And I'm adding them all up, and their sum is 90. So now I just combine like terms. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 x's. There's ones in front of those. If I add them all up, that's 4x. Plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, that would be 6, equals 90. All right. If I subtract 6 from both sides, I get 4x equals 84. And then divide by 4, and x is 21. Okay, so my first integer, I got to answer the question. They said find the 4 integers, so this is just one of them. My first integer is 21. Okay, then my next integer, if x is 21, 21 plus 1 is 22. Then the next one is 23 and 24. And those are my 4 integers, my 4 consecutive integers. The sum of 2 consecutive odd integers is 60. What are the integers? All right, so again, I need to write my let statement. Let x equal the first integer. And this is the sum of 2 consecutive odd integers. So to get from one number, say if this was 5, and I need to get to 7, what would I need to add? I would need to add 2. All right, so that's my second integer, and that's all I need. It just says 2 integers. The sum of those, so x plus 2 is 60, equals 60. If I add up my like terms, I get 2x plus 2 equals 60. Subtract 2, and I get 2x equals 58. Divide by 2, and x equals 29. All right, so that worked out. It says the sum of 2 consecutive odd integers is 60. That's an odd number. If you got an even number, if you got 28 or 30, then you would know you did something wrong. So my first odd integer is 29, and then if I add 2 to that, I get 31. So those are my 2 odd integers. If I were to add those up, that would give me 60. So I know that it's right. All right, find 3 consecutive even integers such that 3 times the first is 10 more than the sum of the second and the third. All right, so again, we need to write our let statements. Find 3 consecutive even integers. Okay, so we know that my first integer is going to be x, so x is the first. I'm just going to use the abbreviation for number, which is the pound sign or the hashtag. So that stands for number. So x is the first number. There's 3 of them, and they're consecutive even integers. So the second one, we would add 2. And the third one, we would add 4. So those are my 3 consecutive even integers. Now, we need to write out the equation. It says such that 3 times the first integer. So my first integer is x. 3 times x would just be 3x. So that equals 10 more than the sum of the first and the third. So the sum of the first, the first and the third, the second and the third. 10 more than the sum of the second and the third. So we're going to add 10 to the second integer and the third integer. All right, and so that's my equation, and I'm going to solve it. I just combine my like terms. 10 plus 2 plus 4, that would be 16. And then x plus x is 2x. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. 3x minus 2x is 1x, which is just x, and that equals 16. So again, it said even integers. My answer is even. So that lets me know that I'm definitely on the right track. So my first number would be 16. If I add 2 to that, that's 18. And if I add 4 to 16, I get 20. So those are my 3 consecutive even integers. All right, the last one says a car rental agency charges $28 a day and 15 cents a mile. If you rent a car for 3 days and your bill is $124.50, how many miles did you drive? All right, so remember I said at the end that usually tells me what we're looking for. How many miles did you drive? Didn't mean to mark that out. So we're looking for the number of miles. So I'm going to say let M equal the number of miles. All right, so a car rental agency charges $28 a day and 15 cents a mile. If you rent a car for 3 days, okay, so they're charging $28 a day, and we rent it for 3 days, so that means we need to multiply 28 times 3. And, so for and, that'd be plus 15 cents per mile. We don't know how many miles, but it's 15 cents for every mile. So what we would need to do is multiply the 15 cents times the number of miles. And it says that our total bill is or equals $124.50. So that's my equation. Let me first multiply this out. Okay, so that would be 8 times 3 is 24, 6, 7, 84. And then if I want to get rid of the decimals, I can. Remember, by moving the decimal places to the right. Since there are 2 decimal places here and 2 decimal places here, I would move everything 2 decimals to the right. So this would give me 8,400. This would be 15M is equal to 12,450. Okay, so now I want to combine my like terms. I'm going to get the stuff that doesn't have m's to one side. Okay, so that gives me 15m is equal to 4,050. And if I divide both sides by 15, I get m equals 270. So that means we drove 270 miles.